Your body's producing its own source of energy every single day, and you have been accidentally shutting down the process. Not a process in your muscles, not in your liver, not in your brain. There is a microscopic system inside your colon where trillions of bacteria are supposed to be producing the exact chemical that your gut cells depend on for 70% of their fuel. When that system is working properly, you wake up sharp, you power through the afternoon without crashing, and you fall asleep at night without tossing for 2 hours. When that system breaks down, it does not matter how much coffee you drink, how many vitamins you take, or how early you go to bed. You will be exhausted. And the terrifying part is that most people's systems started breaking down years ago, and nobody told them. They blamed aging, they blamed stress, they blamed their schedules. But researchers at Jackson Laboratory and Duke University just built an artificial intelligence tool that can analyze a stool sample and diagnose chronic fatigue with 90% accuracy because the evidence of what has gone wrong is not in your blood and it is not in your brain. It is in your gut. If you stay with me until the end of this video, I am going to tell you exactly what that chemical is, why your body probably is not making enough of it, and the specific foods that restore it. This is going to change your life forever. Let me explain what is actually happening inside you, because once you understand this, fatigue will never confuse you again. When you eat food, your body breaks it down and absorbs the nutrients. Everybody knows that part. But there is a critical step in the middle that almost nobody talks about. Certain types of fiber in your food cannot be broken down by your own digestive system. Your stomach cannot touch them. Your small intestine cannot touch them. They pass all the way through to your colon completely intact. And when they arrive, specific bacteria that live in your colon take over. They ferment that fiber and convert it into a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate. Now, butyrate is not some obscure molecule that only scientists care about. It is the primary fuel source for the cells that line your entire colon. Those cells depend on butyrate for 70% of their energy, not from the sugar in your blood, not from the fat you ate at dinner, from butyrate, which is made exclusively by your gut bacteria. A study demonstrated that when colon cells do not receive enough butyrate, they develop a deficit in their ability to produce energy at the cellular level, and they begin breaking themselves down through a process called autophagy, which essentially means the cells start digesting themselves because they have nothing else to run on. When that happens, your gut lining weakens, the barrier becomes thin and fragile, and the consequences reach far beyond your stomach. A major study published in Cell Host and Microbe looked at 106 people suffering from chronic fatigue alongside 91 healthy people of similar age. The researchers mapped every species of bacteria in their guts using advanced genetic sequencing. The fatigued group had dramatically lower levels of two bacteria called Faecalibacterium prusnitzi and Eubacterium rectale, which are two of the most important butyrate producers in the human body. But the finding that should stop you in your tracks is this. The less Faecalibacterium prusnitzi a person had in their gut, the more severe their fatigue was. It was not age that predicted how tired someone felt. It was not fitness level. It was not how many hours they slept. It was the level of one specific group of bacteria and the amount of butyrate those bacteria were producing. The researchers confirmed that nearly every gene involved in the butyrate production pathway was depleted in the fatigued patients. Their guts had essentially lost the ability to make the fuel that their own cells needed to function. Now here's where this gets much more serious, because the damage does not stop at your colon. Your gut lining is made up of a single layer of cells held together by structures called tight junctions. Think of tight junctions as the seals between tiles in a shower wall. When those seals are intact, nothing leaks through. When they weaken, water gets behind the wall and causes damage you cannot see until it becomes a major problem. Butyrate is one of the primary compounds that keep those tight junctions sealed. When butyrate production drops, the seals weaken and gaps form between the cells of your intestinal wall. Once those gaps open, fragments of bacteria, specifically a toxin called lipopolysaccharide, begins slipping through the gut wall into your bloodstream. Your immune system immediately recognizes these toxins as foreign invaders and launches an inflammatory response. This is not the kind of inflammation you can see or feel, like a swollen knee or a red cut. This is a low-grade, invisible, chronic inflammation that circulates through your entire body 24 hours a day. A study on chronic fatigue patients found elevated antibodies against these bacterial toxins in their blood, which is direct proof that their gut walls had become permeable and bacteria were leaking through. The most important part of that study was the conclusion. When researchers were able to seal the gut barrier back up and reduce the amount of toxin leaking into the bloodstream, the patients improved. Their fatigue lifted. Fixing the gut predicted recovery. But the inflammation does not just make you feel generally unwell. It targets a very specific system in your brain, and this is the part that explains why fatigue feels the way it does. Researchers at Emory University have spent years studying how chronic inflammation affects the brain, and what they found is that inflammatory molecules preferentially attack the dopamine system. Dopamine is the chemical in your brain that governs motivation, drive, focus, and the willingness to exert effort. It is the reason you get up and do things. When inflammatory molecules from a leaky gut reach the brain, they reduce the production of dopamine, they reduce how much dopamine is available, and they reduce how much dopamine is released when you need it. In studies where researchers gave inflammatory molecules to previously healthy people, those people developed profound fatigue, complete loss of motivation, mental slowness, and an inability to feel interested in anything, even activities they used to love. These symptoms looked identical to what most people experience when they say they are just tired because they are getting older. And here's the detail that matters most. These symptoms did not respond to standard antidepressants. The reason is that most antidepressants target serotonin, but the fatigue was being caused by inflammation shutting down dopamine. The drugs were treating the wrong chemical. A separate study published in Nature confirmed this gut-to-brain connection even further. Researchers discovered that specific gut bacteria, including the same Eubacterium rectale that was depleted in fatigue patients, stimulate nerve cells in the gut to produce signaling molecules that travel through the vagus nerve directly to the brain and increase dopamine during physical activity. When they eliminated the gut bacteria in mice using antibiotics, the dopamine signal disappeared. The mice were physically capable of running, but they stopped wanting to. Their muscles worked fine. Their hearts worked fine. But their brains no longer generated the chemical that made them want to move. When the bacteria were restored, the motivation came back. The tiredness was never in the body. It was in the gut. And there is one more layer to this that connects to something almost everyone with unexplained fatigue also struggles with, which is poor sleep. Your gut bacteria produce approximately 95% of your body's serotonin. Researchers at Caltech demonstrated that specific bacteria stimulate cells in the colon to manufacture serotonin, and when those bacteria were removed, serotonin levels dropped by roughly 60%. Serotonin is not just a mood chemical. It is the direct building block your body uses to make melatonin, which is the hormone that controls your sleep cycle. When gut bacteria are disrupted and serotonin production falls, melatonin falls with it. Sleep becomes shallow. You may lie in bed for 8 or 9 hours, but your body never reaches the deep, restorative stages that actually recharge you. You wake up feeling like you barely slept because at a biological level, you barely did. And poor sleep increases inflammation, which further damages the gut, which further reduces butyrate, which further weakens the barrier, which allows more toxins into the blood, which further suppresses dopamine. It is a cycle, and every turn of that cycle makes the next one worse. But here's the part that matters. Every single step in that cycle is reversible, and you do not need medication to do it. You need to feed the bacteria that your gut has been starving for. The most effective way to rebuild butyrate-producing bacteria is to eat prebiotic fiber, which is the specific type of fiber that those bacteria feed on. This means adding garlic, onions, leeks, lentils, chickpeas, beans, oats, and apples with the skin still on into your meals every day. You do not need to eat all of them. You need to eat some of them consistently. 2 servings per day is enough to start shifting the bacterial balance within days. Cooked and cooled potatoes and slightly green bananas are particularly powerful because they contain resistant starch, which produces more butyrate than almost any other food. The second step is fermented foods. A clinical trial at Stanford put people on a diet that included 6 servings per day of plain yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, and kombucha for 10 weeks. Microbiome diversity increased steadily throughout the trial, and 19 inflammatory proteins in the blood dropped significantly. A high-fiber diet alone did not produce the same anti-inflammatory effect in the same time frame. The combination of prebiotic fiber and fermented foods together is what produces the most complete result. The third step is to stop destroying what you are trying to rebuild. Added sugars feed the exact bacteria that produce inflammation and erode the mucus layer that protects your gut wall. Artificial sweeteners are even more damaging. A controlled trial gave saccharin and sucralose to people who had never used sweeteners before, and within 2 weeks their gut bacteria had shifted and their blood sugar regulation was impaired. Emulsifiers found in processed foods and flavored coffee creamers, specifically polysorbate 80 and carboxymethylcellulose, have been shown to directly break down the protective mucus barrier of the intestine. If you are drinking sweetened or artificially flavored coffee every morning, you are starting each day by damaging the very system you need to produce energy. The fourth step is a 10-minute walk after your largest meal. This stimulates the vagus nerve, improves gut motility, and reduces blood sugar spikes that feed harmful bacteria. Finish your last meal at least 3 hours before bed so your gut has time to rest and repair during the night, which is when the deepest restoration of the intestinal lining happens. And the fifth step is to add polyphenol-rich foods like berries, green tea, and extra virgin olive oil, because polyphenols feed a specific bacterium called Akkermansia mucinifila that strengthens the mucus lining of the gut. Studies on people who live past 100 have found that this bacterium is consistently present in high amounts in their guts, and it is consistently low in people who suffer from chronic inflammation and fatigue. Here's what it all comes down to. You're not tired because you are getting old. You are tired because the bacteria that fuel your gut cells have declined, which weakened your gut wall, which let toxins into your blood, which triggered silent inflammation, which shut down the dopamine that drives your motivation, and the serotonin that controls your sleep. It is not one problem. It is a chain of problems, and every link in that chain leads back to the gut. But every link in that chain can be repaired, not with a prescription, not with a diagnosis you have to accept, with the specific foods your gut bacteria have been waiting for, the ones that restart the entire process from the beginning.